Hello guys, do you see how beautiful this dress is? This could be you, it could be your testimony if only you will stick to me from the beginning of this tutorial to the end. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this nice sexy cowl neck slip dress. So make sure you watch till the end and let's go there. Yay! To create the pattern for this dress, we are going to start from our upper chest because we don't need the shoulder part of it. So I'm just going to imagine that we are removing 4 inches from the upper side, and then from that 4 inches we are going to measure the rest of our body parts. We're going to measure our armhole depth, we're going to measure our bust points and every other measurement. So the first thing is to remove 4 inches. So I've set my tape at that 4 inches mark so that I will not confuse myself when it's time for me to start doing my measurements. Okay, so for my shoulder depth or my armhole depth, the first thing that I need to do is to divide my normal shoulder by 2, and then I'm going to subtract 0.5 from that because this is a sleeveless dress and also the dress is pretty stretchy, so I don't want it to look too loose on the armpit area. Then I'm going to measure my bust line, my waistline, my hip line. Now I extended all the lines and I'm just labeling them upper chest, bust, waist and hip. Okay, so after that I'm now going to take all my horizontal measurements. The first horizontal measurement I took was my chest measurement, which I marked as 6.25. that is my shoulder minus 1. The next measurement is my upper chest measurement, which was not that very much important, but I ticked it anyway, and then I drew the line just to give you a sense of it, but we're going to change that measurement. Then the next thing was my bust measurement, and for all these measurements, because I'm using a stretchy fabric, I don't need to add a dart, yay. And also I subtracted 1 inch from all the measurements. So for example, my hip measurement is normally 40 divided by 4, which is 10, but I subtracted 1 from it and that made it 9 inches. So all my measurements, I subtracted 1 from it because I'm using a stretchy fabric. If I was not using a stretchy fabric, I do not need to subtract down 1 inch from it. Okay, so you see that I just took a straight line to my chest line from my bust, and then I have all my curves joined together. At the bottom, I just measured my hip measurement, subtracted 0.5 from it, and then I just drew a nice slant. My paper was not long enough for my dress, that's why I just subtracted 0.5 from it. When I cut on my fabric, I will make it more curvy for a pencil gown. So after cutting my pattern out, the next thing is to cut my chest line. That chest line, I just cut it and I'm going to open it. This is where the cowl magic comes in. So I'm just going to spread it open like so, and then I'm going to put a piece of paper right under it so that I can expand it. So at that point I'm using about 4 inches expansion because I don't want it to go too low to expose too much of my my bosom. So that is why I just opened it just a little bit. So you can always open it wider if you want your cowl neck to drop some more. You can even slash it in more places. You can slash it in your bust point line. You can slash it and open it up some more. That will create more ripples for your cowl neck. So it just depends on your personal preference, but I don't want it to go too low, and that's why I'm just opening it just a little bit at that part. Married woman, we're not supposed to open our bosom too much, just saying. I'm kidding. All right, so after doing that, I'm just going to extend my line to the center front line, all the way to the center front line. Just draw a straight line all the way to the center front line, and then I'm going to tape down my upper pattern because it just keeps flying. Like, I don't know why it's flying like that, but I'm just going to sellotape it all the way down, and then I'm going to cut out all the excess paper around it, and you see that we have our new cowl pattern. Now moving on, we are going to use this pattern to create our back pattern. So I placed the front pattern on a new piece of paper or a new pattern paper, and then I'm just going to trace from the armhole, okay, because the back pattern starts from the armhole, not from the upper part. And then I'm just going to trace out the shape on the new paper underneath to make our back pattern. Now after doing that, I'm just going to connect the line on top as a straight line at first, and then I'm going to create a tiny dip, just because, just like a 0.5 or 0.75 dip, just for that. Now after that, I cut out the back pattern and I just folded the paper into two in the middle like this, and then I created a dart, just a tiny dart, to make sure that there is no gaping at the back. You know when you wear a dress and it is gaping at the back, so that tiny dart was just to eradicate the gape that you would normally notice at the back. So I just removed it by just like 0.5 inches. That's all I removed, to remove that gaping at the back. Now going back to the front pattern, we want to create like a mini facing for the front pattern, because we don't want to add a facing and have a line showing in the front of our cowl. So I've just put a paper right under our pattern, and I'm going to just trace out the front pattern on that paper. After tracing it out, I open it up and then I sellotape both sides together. If I had more paper at the top, I wouldn't need to like add extra journal. I've just folded it in, but I didn't really put that into consideration, so that's why I had to add the extra paper. So I'm just sellotaping it together at the top there, so it will be one whole piece and there will be no like addition or whatever. Like, it will be a whole piece when I cut it on my fabric. So after that, I'm just going to cut a slant line from the armhole of that side down to the middle of the front, because that front part is what is going to collapse to form the cowl neck, but that the other side where the armhole is going to create like a facing for our armhole. So I folded it in, so you see what it looks like, and the front will collapse just like that. So I'm going to now cut it on my fabric. I cut it on my fabric, and this is what it looks like. While I cut on my fabric, I set a notch on the armhole for the upper and lower parts. The new pattern that I added and the former pattern, I just cut out the armhole on my fabric so that I'll know where the armholes are, and then I pin it together, so there will be no confusion as to where my armhole is or how I'm supposed to set the arm of the dress, because it can be very confusing with cowl neck. You don't know where the armhole disappeared to, you just know the armhole has disappeared. So that is why I put the notch, and I advise you to also put the notch as well. Okay, so now that I have done that, another tip again is to make sure that you add at least 0.5 inches seam allowance round about your fabric, so that you can use that seam allowance to sew your front and back pieces together. So this is what it looks like when, you know, after I finish cutting the pattern on the fabric, and this is what the cowl would look like. You see that it's already looking really nice. Oh my god. Now we're going to move on to cutting the straps. Now I'm not going to use the regular fabric straps. I have this nice pearl trimmings that I got a long time ago, and I want to use it as the straps of my dress. You can also do the same thing with yours, just to give it a nice classy edge, to make it look a little bit different. But if you don't have that trimming, you can also use your fabric. You can just cut out 1 inch by 14 inches. So the length of the loop you need for the straps is like 14 inches, and you have 1 inch, and then you sew it together with about 0.5 inches same allowance and turn it inside out. But right now I am using this nice trimming that I have. Somebody say sewing time. Happy times. Okay, so it's time for us to sew our front and back pieces together. I have my back piece, my front piece, and I have this tiny facing that I want to use to turn over my back, and then I have the pearl trimmings. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to sew the front and the back on the side, and I'm going to start from the bottom all the way to the top. I would strongly advise that you use pins to pin it from bottom to the top when you sew or while you sew. Me, I have too much mind, and that is why I'm not using pins right now. I use like just a couple of pins, but please pin it from top to bottom or from bottom to top, because it's so much easier that way. I had so many battles to fight with this fabric with not pinning it. I don't know when I will learn my lesson. You should please advise me to be a better pinner. Anyhow, I shall manage to pin like 1 or 2 places. You see, I'm trying. I'm doing my best. Okay, so as you keep sewing all the way up, leave about 2 inches at the very top, because you still have to do some magic at that point to join the front and back patterns together, and you still have to put in your straps to be able to join everything together. So just keep that in mind as you sew both sides together, the right side and also the left side, I believe. Okay, Next thing is to sew in your strands. Okay, so I just found that the notches that I pinned them together. Remember the notches that I said you should notch one for your armhole point so you know how you will fold it in. So I put the notches together, pinned them together again, and then I put the strap right in through that hole. So that's the way I know where the top of my upper shoulder is, and then I pin it down, and then I'm just going to sew it all the way down. And when I finish sewing it, it's going to look like this. Now remember that I said the length of the strap was 14 inches, so I measured out 14 inches. So that part is where I'm going to add to the back. Now at the back, at the center of the back, you're going to measure 3 inches, just 3 inches, and at that point you are going to notch it. The 3 inches mark is where the strap at the front is going to meet the back. So the length of your strap 14 inches, and you put it on the 3-inch mark from the middle of your center back. So that's the notch that I made right there, and then I'm going to put my strap right on that notch, and I'm going to sew, or you can also just pin it down at that point, so then you can sew on top of it. So I'm just gonna pin it down, and then now, because this is a pearl strand, see the way I'm saying pearl, pearl strand, please make sure you are careful with the stitching using a sewing machine. If you are not sure about that, you can just use needle and thread. This is just for my pearl users. If you're using a normal strand, you don't have to worry about your sewing needle or your sewing machine. So after I just put it on, I just sewed it down. Now I'm going to cut my strands, and then I'm going to put my facing on my back. I did it for the other side too, so my two sides already have their pearl strands, and now I just put my facing on top of the back, and then I'm sewing carefully all the way down the back area. After this step, I'm just going to make sure that all my facings are neat. I'm just going to stitch it down with like a zigzag stitch, the facing at the front and the facing at the back, and I'm going to show you what it looks like after this step. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I finished it with a zigzag stitch, just the facing area with a zigzag stitch. This is what the back looks like now, and the front also looks similar to it. I just used a zigzag stitch to finish it. It looks really neat, and now it's time to sew the remaining of the upper part of the sides. So I'm just using the back as a sandwich, or I'm sandwiching the front between the back and the front like so, and then I just sew it all the way to the top. And then after doing that, I just cut out all the excess thread, and this is what it looks like with the sandwich. You can finish the rest of the sides with a zigzag stitch to make it look completely clean or neat, and if you have a serger, hallelujah, you have hit the market. All right, so this is what it looks like. The finished product is so pretty, it's so beautiful, and now I'm going to wear it and show you what it looks like. And then for the bottom of the dress, you can do it the same way you did the facing. That's if you want to do it that way, but for me, I did not do it that way because the bottom of the dress, it has like this white nice I don't know what the name of it called, but it has this nice white finish, so I didn't need to tuck it in. I didn't tuck it in. I just left it as a nice design to the dress. But if you want to tuck it in, just repeat the same zigzag stitch that you did for the facing at the bottom. Just fold it in once and zigzag stitch it neatly. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share. Bye.